I see several folks are still connecting to audio, so we're going to wait just a couple more minutes before we get started. I'm still seeing folks connecting, so we're going to give it just a couple more minutes. Maybe not even quite that. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead. Looks like most folks are connected at this point. Thank you all very much for being here. My very first order of business is to let you know that this meeting is being recorded. This is a meeting for the general plan update for the City of Los Banos. I'm Joanna Jansen. We're going to introduce ourselves in just a second, but first I'm going to share a screen and let you know that we have translation available. So let me just do that real fast. Oh, I did this wrong. Hang on just a second. I'm sorry. Try that one more time in the correct way. There we go. Okay. Ricky, could you go ahead with the announcement, please?
Muchas gracias a todos por atender. Soy Ricky, soy parte de Placeworks. Queremos hacer un anuncio muy rápido. Aquí en esta vamos a ofrecer traducción en español. Si alguien necesita, por favor, mande un chat. En el nombre va a decir necesita traducción y para poderles enseñar cómo se puede usar las funciones de traducción simultánea. Muchas gracias. Go ahead, Joanna.
Great. Thank you, Ricky. Cliff, can you start the interpretation channel now that I'm sharing my screen? Or do I need to go back over and do that?
I cannot see the interpretation channel.
Okay, I'm going to stop now that we've shown you how to do that, and I will go ahead and start interpretation. There you go.
I can see it now.
All right, so the globe should be available now for folks who want to click on that. And let's go back over to the slideshow and get you welcomed properly. Okay, go ahead, Stacy.
Right. So I'm Stacy Souza Elms. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Los Banos. I just want to thank everyone for coming on. We've started this process with Placeworks back in 2017. The last time that the city updated our general plan, it was officially adopted in 2009 by the City Council. But the data and the analysis that was a part of that update was done in 2005 and in 2005, 2006 time period. And so we felt a couple of years ago that it was time for us to update our general plan. So we would make sure that we were in accordance with state laws as they had changed. And we wanted to be able to reflect that with our general plan, as that is our most important planning document, guiding foundational document for the City of Los Banos. So thank you everyone for attending. And at the end of the meeting, if you have any questions, and offline, if you'd like to reach out to me, please do so. I'm sure our information will be available. But I'm just glad everyone took the time out of their day to hear a little bit about what we're doing with our general plan update.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Joanna Jansen. I am a principal with a planning firm called PlaceWorks. We help communities throughout California with long-range planning for their future, and we are the city's consultant on this general plan update. I am joined today by two other PlaceWorks staff members. Cliff Lau is our project manager, and Ricky Pozos, who spoke earlier, is here to support anyone who would like to participate in this meeting in Spanish. In today's workshop, we will begin in just a few minutes with a poll to understand a little bit more about who you are and how you heard about the meeting. Then we will briefly explain what the general plan is and how it's important to you and to everyone who has an interest in Los Banos. We will review the community outreach that we have done so far for the project, give you a sense of the schedule for completing the general plan, and then leave most of the time in this meeting for your comments and questions in a town hall style. Before we close at 7, we will review next steps with you so you understand what's coming next. So with that, it's time for the poll, and I'm going to ask Cliff to go ahead and launch the poll, please. So you should see some questions on your screen right now, asking a little bit about what's your relationship to Los Banos, and you can select as many of these as are relevant to you. Maybe some of you do all of these things in Los Banos, and that's fantastic. We also are always curious to know how you heard about this meeting, how our outreach is successful, and what are ways that we can improve. And also it's great for me as your presenter tonight to understand a little bit about how familiar you are with the general plan. And there may be some folks here tonight who have never even heard the words general plan, and that's totally okay. You're in the right place. I'm going to explain that. And we're really excited that you're joining us, even if you're not yet familiar with the project. I'm going to give people just a couple more seconds to have a chance to read through the questions and submit their responses. And then we'll close the polling and keep going with our presentation in the meeting tonight. I'll close this at a minute and a half. Cliff, I think we can go ahead and close now. Everybody may not want to respond, but we're up to about 3/4, so that's great. Thank you very much. I will, okay, good. We'll share the results. Thank you. So it looks like the largest number of, or most folks are, almost half of people are property owners in Los Banos, and 42% are residents of Los Banos. And then also we have 32% are business owners. So that's great. We have residents and business owners. And again, I understand that some of you may be both, and some of you may also be property owners. Developer representative, and several folks who represent agencies or organizations that work in and around Los Banos. So thank you very much. That's great for us to understand a little bit about who's here. How did you hear about this meeting? Most people heard about this meeting through email, so that's good for us to know that our messages are being seen, and a few people saw it on the city's social media account. So thanks for that. And it looks like we have really a range of people who are familiar with the general plan, from a couple people who are not at all familiar with it. Most people here are at least somewhat familiar with the general plan, and a few people here are very familiar with the general plan. So that's great. I will try to calibrate this presentation to meet the needs and the levels kind of all three of those group, but I will have a particular interest in making sure that those of you who are not at all familiar yet can come up to speed and are more conversant with what the general plan is by the end of my presentation. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing these results and close the poll, and we will move on. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking a few minutes to answer our questions. So what is a general plan? The general plan is what we call the constitution for growth and development in Los Banos. It establishes the city's vision for the future and supporting goals and policies and actions to achieve that vision. It provides consistent direction for future development as city staff and elected officials change over time. And it is one of the most powerful documents that the city has to balance growth with quality of life in Los Banos. This slide shows the current city limits of Los Banos. I'm showing you this because the general plan applies within the city limits. Land outside of the city limits is regulated by Merced County. However, it's also important for the general plan to look beyond the current boundaries of the city, because part of what the general plan does is think ahead about possible future growth. So other important boundaries in the general plan include the urban growth boundary, which is the magenta line on this map. And the urban growth boundary, the urban growth boundary expresses the future of urban development that will someday be a part of Los Banos. And the sphere of influence is the other important line on this map. That's the
Alcanzar de la ciudad.
Indicates to
La
other
zona
agencies what are areas outside of Los Banos but close by where that might affect life in the city. And the city would like to be consulted about any projects within the sphere of influence. We have had, as some of you may know, we have had some conversations with the city council about potential changes to these boundaries as a part of the general plan update. But no decisions have been made yet, and those conversations are ongoing. Because the general plan is such an important document, we have been doing various outreach to the community and having other types of meetings over the past 3 years since we started this effort in 2018. Outreach so far has included a project website, attendance at community events like the May Day Fair, and meetings with various committees and stakeholder groups. We have also had a number of study sessions with the city's Planning Commission and City Council. And today we're here with you, and we're very grateful for your time and interest in this project. Now I'm going to explain a little bit more detail about what is in the general plan, now that you understand a little bit better about what it covers. These are some of the fundamental issues that the general plan is intended to address. Economic development, growth management, and annexation, meaning adding land to the city. Downtown and supporting a thriving and vibrant downtown. Agricultural mitigation and understanding our potential impacts on farmlands around Los Banos if and as the city grows. Water supply, historic preservation, and updates to make sure that the general plan and the city is following the law in terms of what's required to be in the general plan. The general plan addresses these issues through individual chapters or elements. And in the next several slides, I'm going to go through each one of these elements. Some of these are required by state law and others are optional elements that the city has chosen to include. I should mention that one very important required element of the general plan is called the housing element. And it ensures that the city has policies and programs in place to support adequate housing for all members of the community at all income levels. Because housing is such a priority for the state of California, the state has a number of very specific rules about what must be in the housing element. And it's the only element of the general plan that's required to be reviewed and approved by the state. So therefore, the housing element is actually prepared under a separate process according to its own legally required schedule. So the housing element is a part of the general plan, but it is the only element that is not being updated as part of the general plan update. So in the next few slides, I'm going to go through all of the other elements that you see on this slide. Let's start with the land use element. The land use element determines how land is allowed to be used, including land where the city will allow the building of new homes, new businesses, and civic uses like schools and parks. It really sets the city's expectation for the look and the feel and the quality of new development. So some of the goals in our land use element include things like creating complete and high quality neighborhoods, providing different types of housing, attracting new employment, and improving downtown, just to give you a sense of the kind of thing that's in the land use element. And this is the draft land use map for the updated general plan. The colors on this map determine what can be built where and what individual property owners are allowed to build on their property. Determining the type and character of development that's located in different parts of town is one of the most important ways that the general plan plans for the future of Los Banos. And this version of the map, you will notice that some of the parcels or little shapes that make up the town are outlined in a bright pink. And those are the parcels that have a general plan land use designation proposed to change as part of this general plan. We can come back to this map if you want to during the discussion. But the land use map is a very important piece of this update. Next element to talk about is the circulation element. And in this case, when we use the word circulation, we are referring to transportation and the way that people and goods move around or circulate around Los Banos. So the circulation element establishes the transportation network in Los Banos and identifies where we might need to be making improvements in the future. Some of the goals in the circulation element address things like improving walking, bicycling, and public transit throughout Los Banos, and making roads, trails, and sidewalks accessible and safe for all users, including youth, seniors, and people with disabilities. The parks, open space, and conservation element, which also includes air quality, a required element in the Central Valley, guides the creation, maintenance, and improvements to parks and open spaces. And it includes goals that are intended to protect farmland, protect water quality, protect cultural and historic places, protect tribal resources, wildlife, habitat, and air quality. It also includes goals to promote sustainability. So that includes ideas like supporting renewable energy, water conservation, and planning for a changing climate over the lifetime of the general plan. The safety and noise element helps the city plan for emergencies by identifying risks from hazards and natural disasters in Los Banos. It includes goals about adapting to and preparing for a whole range of risks from the natural environment, like earthquakes and flooding and fires. And it also helps structure and provide goals that guide the city's preparation for and response to emergencies and disasters. Of course, there are other very important documents that address these topics in more depth, but the general plan helps to set the overall guidance for the city. And then the noise components of the safety and noise element regulate noise and mitigate its harmful effects. It regulates where land uses can be located based on how sensitive they are and how noisy the environment is in different areas. It establishes interior and exterior measures that can reduce noise levels so that it doesn't impact our residents as much. And it also has measures to reduce the impacts of noise from some specific sources like construction or airport flights. The economic development element is not required by state law. It's an optional element, but the city has chosen to include it because it's a very important priority for the city council and for city staff. The economic development element addresses ways that the city can create jobs in Los Banos, support local businesses, improve and enhance downtown, and maintain the fiscal health of the city, meaning the revenues and costs that the city itself incurs that guide the level of services that it can provide to citizens. Another optional element is the public facilities and services element, which guides how the city will improve and maintain facilities, services, and utilities to serve current and future residents and businesses. Some of the services that the city provides specifically include the community center, water, wastewater, and solid waste or trash, garbage services. And then, of course, other agencies separate from the city provide other very important public facilities and services like schools, cultural facilities, electricity and gas, things like that. So this element includes policies that guide both the way the city provides the services that it's responsible for, and also how the city collaborates with other service providers in Los Banos. I'm going to spend the next few slides talking about a concept called environmental justice, because it's a new required topic for the general plan. So environmental justice is the idea that everyone deserves a safe and healthy neighborhood, regardless of your income level, your race, or your ethnic background, what you do for your living, what kind of home you live in. Everyone should be able to have a safe and healthy neighborhood. There are neighborhoods in Los Banos and around Los Banos where things like air pollution and groundwater threats do pose serious issues. We also know that many neighborhoods in and around Los Banos experience things like rates of asthma, cardiovascular disease, like heart disease, linguistic isolation, meaning not speaking English that well, and
y desempleo.
So some neighborhoods and some homes in Los Banos are kind of struggling with these issues more than people in California on average. Because of that combination of issues, there's a state law, a relatively recent state law, it's called SB 1000, Senate Bill 1000, that requires the general plan to address environmental justice in Los Banos. To identify places in California where environmental justice is a problem, where we're not doing as well as a community as we could. The state has compiled data on about 20 different indicators of pollution, health, and other social and economic factors for every single census tract in California. This chart shows the scores for the 5 census tracts that make up Los Banos. My next slide has a map of where these are. So when you look at these indicators down the left side of the slide, things like pesticides, groundwater threats, impaired water bodies, asthma, where you see those dark red bars or the dark orange bars, those are indicators where these census tracts have scores that are among the worst 25% in the state. And this map shows the combined total score for each census tract. So if you add up all the scores of each one of these 20 things, you get a total score, and that's what's shown on this map. The darkest red color on the map, which is the area in downtown Los Banos and the area around the hospital, as well as over here by the airport. That's among the census tracts in the state with the worst total scores. And other red or dark orange areas on the map also have high combined scores for these environmental justice factors, meaning that there's significant issues that are affecting the health of people who are living and working in these neighborhoods. Because the state data that I just looked at shows that Los Banos has these issues, the general plan is required by state law to address environmental justice. Specifically, the general plan will include policies and actions to reduce pollution exposure, improve services, improve community amenities, and improve food access in the most impacted neighborhoods, to ensure safe and sanitary homes, to encourage physical activity, And very importantly, to promote engagement from the people who live in these affected communities in city decision-making, which is exactly what you're doing here tonight. So again, thank you. The final important piece to be aware of the general plan update is not the general plan itself, but what we call the Environmental Impact Review, or EIR. So the state law requires us to do an intensive analysis of how the general plan would impact the physical environment in and around Los Banos. Like I just said, it's called an Environmental Impact Review. You often hear it referred to as an EIR. It will study impacts to transportation, agriculture, plant and animal habitats, public services, water supply, agriculture, historic resources, among many other topics. The EIR is required to be a public document. So when we have that complete and available, it will be posted on the city's website, and it will be available for public review this summer. Now that I have explained a little bit about what the general plan is and does, the rest of this meeting is really for you to get your questions answered and to share how you think the general plan can and should address topics that are important to you, bearing in mind what you just learned about what the general plan contains and the types of things that it addresses. So you have two options for offering a comment or asking a question. If you want to speak your comments, you can use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you and you'll be able to speak. And if you prefer to type your question, that's fine too. You can chat to us and click chat and then type in your question or comment. And you can chat to me or Stacy or Cliff or Ricky, especially if you would like to offer a comment in Spanish, please direct that to Ricky or Traducción. And then we will read it out loud and respond. So you might already have ideas about what you want to share, and we're very open to that. Please feel free to ask the questions or provide comments on whatever topics are important to you. These are some ideas to kind of prompt your thinking that we're interested in hearing about, but we're also interested in hearing whatever feedback you would like to offer. And before I go to the questions, I do just want to quickly give you a sense of the next steps so you kind of understand where we're going next. And I will come back to this at the end of the meeting to remind us all. But let me go ahead and just show you right now. We are going to be considering the input offered here tonight, as well as at other meetings that we're hosting, to put together a draft of the general plan, and that'll be published this summer. Once that general plan is out on the street, there's going to be several more months of collecting additional comments and feedback on the plan. And during that same time, the draft EIR that I just mentioned is also going to be available for public review and comment. And that public review period we anticipate will last through the fall. When we have considered all of the input on the plan and on the EIR, we will be making the necessary revisions to both of those documents and bring the proposed general plan to the Los Banos City Council for adoption. So please understand that we're still, we don't have a draft plan published yet. We are still taking input, decide how to shape that draft plan. And then even after the plan is on the street, we're going to continue to listen to you and hear from you. So no decisions have been made yet, and it's going to still be several more months before any decisions are made and before the final plan is adopted. At any time during that process, if you have a question or you want to provide additional feedback, you can email Cliff or Stacy at the email addresses that are shown here. And very importantly, I want everybody to know you can find documents, meeting notices, and sign up for our mailing list at losbanos2040.org. That's the website for the general plan specifically. So that's what's happening next, and that's how to offer your feedback. So right now, let me just go back to remind you about how to offer your questions. And if you need any additional support on this, just let us know and we will help you figure out how to give your comment. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can all see each other and open this up for your feedback.
So we have a first hand up by Patricia. I'll ask them to unmute.
Great. Go ahead, Tricia.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, the question was, is there any way we get a copy of the presentation so we could be seen if we missed part of it, so we could give input and share it with others?
Yeah, of course. We'd love for anybody to help spread the word about the general plan update. This presentation will be posted on the losbanos2040.org site that I just mentioned, along with the recording of this meeting. It looks like we have a hand up from Jarrett. Jarrett's iPhone would like to make a comment.
Yeah, Jarrett's iPhone. Thank you. Jarrett Martin, General Manager at Central California Irrigation District. First, thank you for putting this presentation together. I know it's a lot of work to go through a general plan update. My first concern is the district and exchange contractors have partnered with the City of Los Banos. City is their own GSA or groundwater sustainability agency. They're part of the exchange contractors GSP or groundwater sustainability plan. And in going through a big general plan update, we're anxiously waiting for a sit down with the city. I know with COVID, sit downs are hard, but in looking at modifying your general plan, we want to make sure that we're consistent with SGMA. The city's in a state of overdraft, and we need to make sure that we're taking the corrective actions that the city indicated that they would start heading down to make sure that if the rubber meets the road here with SGMA in the next couple of years, that they're on their way to achieving independent sustainability. It's a community in our backyard, and we want to make sure that they're successful. And so I think before getting too far down into a general plan and putting some timelines of what it's going to look like, we may need to sit down and think through groundwater as the city's only source of water, its impacts to water quality, hexavalent chromium, among other constituents of concern, just to make sure that what the city's doing in their general plan is consistent with what the state expects of us as GSAs and in our GSP. So when we get to that point, I think it's probably sooner than later. The district would love to sit down and help think through some of these issues with the city.
Sure. Thank you for that comment, Jarrett. And so just for those of you who don't have to deal with these issues every day, SGMA is in this case, is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and it requires the city and the irrigation district both to participate in planning for sustainable groundwater. And as Jarrett noted, groundwater is the only water supply for the city of Los Banos. So knowing that we can safely provide water to all the users in Los Banos who need it, not only today, but planning for 20 or even farther ahead, more years of growth is certainly very important. And appreciate you bringing that up, Jarrett.
Yeah, and then the next thing is, I know timelines are big, and the general plan, you put one timeline together and it's already changed by tomorrow. But when we start looking at changing infrastructure and you talked about changing ag use and annexations and that fun stuff. I know there's been a lot of turnover or retirements at the city. And so we were historically working with Mark Fashion. And so I think it's now we're working with Fred. We need to make sure that we keep that relationship going to make sure that our two systems are integrated. Said differently, the city heavily relies on CCAD's infrastructure for a lot of stormwater and recharge. So as we start to go through this general plan update, I think it's would behoove both the city and the district to plan in advance rather than having to figure out how to make ends meet at the end. So that's my comment, and I'll go back to mute. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for that, Jarrett. Great example of comments and feedback that is very relevant to planning for the future of the city and the role of the general plan. So thank you for that. Let's see, I saw Walt's hand next and then Chris. Go ahead, Walt. Walt, are you there? Are you able to unmute? Oh,
Okay, am I unmuted?
yes.
Okay, it's actually Kathy. I'm using my husband's computer, so his name goes on everything.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, I have a quick question. In regards to the chart you had that showed all of the downtown areas so bad for everything, asthma, water, how come that one pocket is when, like Jared was saying, we use well water? Why is it different for just downtown? And I just wanted to know if there's an explanation for it, and how do we make that better with the next plan?
Yeah, sure. Well, the map that I showed is really a combined score for all of the 20 indicators that the state collected data on. And even within those indicators, data is collected, of course, from different and sometimes more than one source. So the downtown area is darker because it has worse scores than the other census tracts in Los Banos for exposure to particulate matter. Those are like the tiny, tiny little bits of air pollution that are emitted, especially from like trucks and cars exhaust. So that, my guess would be, is probably from the proximity to State Route 152. It does have slightly worse scores for groundwater threats, even than other parts of Los Banos, as well as worse scores for asthma, cardiovascular disease, educational attainment, linguistic isolation, and poverty levels. So the combination of the worse scores according to those things is what contributes to it being that darker red color as opposed to the nearly red of some of the other surrounding census tracts. And your question about how to make it better is a great one.
How would any kind of plan, even though it's in 2040, how would you tackle that problem?
Yeah,
you couldn't make the roads bigger and buildings smaller or more spread out. You couldn't do that.
Right, it's a huge problem for sure, and the city can't tackle it alone. But there are some things that the city can do. So especially when we look at things like asthma and particulate matter, those are pretty directly connected. The pollutants in the air, irritate and impair our airways and make it hard for us and our children to breathe. And so anything that not only the city, but the state, or even the federal government or the local San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District can do to, for example, make cars and trucks cleaner, encourage people to drive less. All of those things will help the air be cleaner, and that will help the asthma score go down. Similarly, with the cardiovascular disease, what the city can do in the general plan to make sure that neighborhoods include parks, and that parks are places that people can walk to, and that it's safe and convenient and attractive to go out of your house and take a walk or get some exercise, or that you have a safe place to ride a bike, or that your kids have a safe playground to play on. All of those ways of being able to get exercise and have a healthy lifestyle have a direct effect on things like cardiovascular disease and bringing that score down. But again, I think you can tell from the nature of these kind of indicators, each one of them does represent a significant problem. The city has a really important role to play, as do many other agencies and service providers. But the general plan is a place where we think we can make a start by doing things that are within the city's control to offer people an opportunity to have a healthier lifestyle, supporting programs to give people safe and sanitary housing, access to healthy food, etc.
Now, this is a new requirement, I assume, by the state,
Correct.
this environmental. I guess I'm being blunt, but if you knew me, you know I'm always blunt. Are we just putting something in there to appease the state? Because I can't see how a city could make people go for walks, could make people eat better food, could make people, it's not an option out there that the city can do. I don't think Stacy wants to go to everyone's house and find out what they're eating for dinner, or, you know, have anybody else take them for a walk.
Yeah.
So
No,
how would you put that in to appease the state so that we're within their requirements?
Right. Well, the state's asking us to take a look at this and think about what are some things that the city can do, right? And so,
Okay.
no, not control, you know, how many hot dogs I eat. The city can't make me get off my couch and walk, for sure. But they can have a policy that says, if you're building a new neighborhood, that new neighborhood shouldn't just include houses, it should include a park, and it should include sidewalks that connect the houses to that park. And it should include bike paths on some of the streets so that people, if they want to get out and ride a bike, they at least have that option. And it's not just, you know, wall to wall traffic with not even space to ride a bike. So it's the city's job to think about how neighborhoods and different parts of town get built, and to think ahead about the ways that those areas either could be built in the first place, or now that they already exist, maybe we can go back and improve them by painting a bike lane or by planting some street trees, so that, you know, one day if I feel the urge to take a walk, I know that I can step outside my door and it's going to be a nice place to do it. But that's kind of, that's the role that the city can play, as one example.
So that would be for new development, not for the downtown area that's already been there for, you know, 100 years.
Well, the downtown areas, you know, fortunately, it kind of it was originally built at a time, right, when fewer people drove, and so it does have a lot already in place. It needs a lot of less kind of reverse engineering than other places, but the policies in the general plan should address both existing development and future development, both, and how, if it's already in place, how can we improve it, and if it's not built yet, what do we aspire to?
Okay, if I have another question, do you want me to take a break and raise my hand again later?
That would be awesome, Kathy. I want to get to other people too.
Not a problem.
To come back
Not,
to you.
okay.
Thanks for offering that. Let's see. I think the next hand that I saw up was from Chris, and then after that, Maria. Go ahead, Chris.
Good evening. I want to thank you for setting up the forum. It's been very helpful. My name is Chris Medeiros. I'm also with Central California Irrigation District. I'm the newly elected board member for the Los Banos area. I just recently kind of was made aware of the city's plans, and when I say recently, probably in the last couple months. And I've had the opportunity to engage with the ag community surrounding Los Banos, and a few things comments, I guess, I wanted to bring to your guys' attention. You're probably aware of it, but maybe not. And, you know, Jarrett took a good approach at 10,000 feet, but I'm going to bring you guys down in the weeds a bit. And one is, currently the city is impacting the farming operations, be it with overdraft or several other challenges with theft and pollution and whatever it may be. I know ag has its issues as well, but so does urban on agriculture. So I'd like to see how we're going to address that, so I can you know, come back to my constituents and say, hey, we're asking the right questions. The other one is the challenges with the outreach during COVID. I know it's presented a lot of challenges that we're all aware of, but there's also challenges within agriculture that we're not aware of, and that is it's already the farming has become a lot tougher during these times. these growers are not always able to engage in these different forums or have the ability to pull up the internet and see what they're telling me is that they're not aware of what's been taking place, and they really don't have the time right now. Margins have shrunk, and the farming operation is requiring their full attention. So we need to figure out how we can have some better outreach with the ag community. The other one is in the urban boundary and then the sphere of influence that you've been presenting. You're looking at developing some of the most prime soils in the state of California. They have a story index of 100. It doesn't get better than that. You also have some of the strongest water rights overlapping those soils. When we go and develop that prime combination is lost forever. So I want to take that into consideration, especially that Los Banos Creek corridor. Those soils were built off the alluvial fans that took eons to create, and it's been a pleasure to farm some of that ground. So, and talking with the folks that are. So I want to take that perspective into consideration. The last one is there's growers currently engaging with the NRCS with permanent agriculture easements. Again, the city needs to be aware that there's interest in this in the ag community. The ag community is, if you look what's going around this along outside the city, they're making investments in their farming that are 25, 30-year investments, sometimes more. And like I said earlier, urban areas do impact these ag communities. So I'd like to make sure we have a counterbalance there. And obviously I would also like to touch on what Jared had brought up. Those are as a board member now and seeing also the big picture, it is quite concerning. We would like to definitely have a forum with an exchange with the city. It seems like the folks we've been working with have been some turnover, and I think you folks need to be made aware of what's been taking place. So appreciate your time.
Great, thank you for that, Chris. I heard real concerns there about the impacts that urban development can have on adjacent farming operations, and acknowledgement that farmers in particular are really struggling during the COVID pandemic. It was a tough time for many of us, and especially for growers who either aren't aware of projects like this, or even if they are, just simply don't have time to deal with these kind of meetings with the rest of us here tonight. Concerned about potential development of prime farmland, some of the very valuable farmland, even at a statewide level. That's near Los Banos, especially along the Los Banos Creek corridor on the west side of town. And just bringing to our awareness that there are growers and farmers in the area who are interested in permanent ag easements and making long-term investments on their land. So it's great to be aware of all of those things. And certainly we see CCID, the Central California Irrigation District, as a very important stakeholder in this process. I know Stacy feels that way. Stacy, is there anything you would like to add?
Jarrett and Chris bring up excellent points, and I'm sure Maria will as well. But that CCID, we just want to continue to reiterate, well, all of our water districts are important partners, but that we will be reaching out to CCID, and we will be coordinating a one-on-one meeting, definitely. And our intent is to do that before the draft goes out. So thank you guys for attending the meeting today and your input.
Yeah, thank you. With that, I will move on to Maria, and then after that, back to Patricia. And I want to also, just before I do that, Maria, acknowledge some comments that I received in the chat. And Ricky, can you just give me a nod or a shake of the head whether you're doing interpretation right now on the other channel? Yes, you are. Okay, I'm not going to take you off, but I'm going to attempt in my Spanish to read a couple of Spanish language comments that I got in the chat that are to me, and I'll send these to you as well, Ricky, so that you can help translate them and maybe just send it back to me. The first one is from Gabriela, and she says, es urgente la desviación de los camiones transportistas de la Pacheco a la Pioneer. And that has to do with moving truck traffic off of Pacheco and onto Pioneer, which has been a separate project, the Pacheco Pioneer Complete Streets. That's been happening over the past several months, and the City Council has approved a plan for the Pioneer Road kind of bypass type of option. So that's related to, but separate from the general plan update. And then another comment in the chat that says low income housing needed. So thank you for those comments, Gabriela and others. Okay, and with that, Maria, please go ahead and add your voice.
Good evening. This is Maria with CCID, and by now I think you know who I am because I've made myself been speaking regarding our farmers, and both Chris and Jared brought up good things, but there's one item that I'm kind of wondering, how are the farmers getting notified of these meetings? That it seems to be a problem. As Chris mentioned, most of these farmers are working, landowners are working. Some of them are out in the county. They don't have they might not even have internet connection. I live in town and my internet connection today was down at home. Not everybody has or they have a way to connect to find out what's going on with the city, with what the plans are. So I'm just wondering, is anybody sending out letters to all these landowners that these areas are being affected to let them know, hey, this is going on? And are any letters also being sent to them to let them know this is what happened, this is what we discussed, and our following meeting is going to be on such and such date if you are interested in attending? It's just kind of a suggestion. I'm just kind of wondering, because I'm thinking of our farmers. I'm thinking, like Chris said, I mean, they're out there working in the fields. There's dairymen out there working in the dairies, and all of that is part of our district. Chris brought up the west part of our district, and as I've mentioned before, I bring the south side of our district in as well. Again, prime land, anything south of Pioneer. You look at it, you drive down Mercy Springs, you drive down Pioneer, Center Avenue, Ortigalita, you see everything being farmed. That's your bread and that's your butter and that's your clothing. And San Joaquin Valley is not known for being the bread basket just for nothing. We are the bread basket because we serve not only the valley, not only California, but United States and throughout the world. So it's something to be really, to think about it. And as I've mentioned before, 20 years from now doesn't seem, yeah, it's 20 years, but 20 years goes by fast. And Stacy and I will be gone. Well, maybe Stacy will still be here. I know I'll be gone, but those are things that we need to think about, and we need to think about the future and what's going to happen to these farmers and to their children. They're growing up, they're learning the same trade. And it's wonderful to have homes, yes, but you also have to be able to feed people. And to be able to feed people, you have to have good ground to be able to produce. And there's places that the land is not as well, where I could see that's a good area to build, where the farmland should be protected and should be looked at more as, that's the diamond. That's a diamond where everything is growing to produce for everybody. But anyway, my main concern was how's everybody getting notified? Because I would think, especially nowadays, we have connections to all the titles. We know everybody's addresses. Anybody that's in the city they know by parcel numbers, their mailing addresses. I would think there should be a way we should send out a letter, or the city should send out a letter, let people know you're having somebody there that's speaking in Spanish to translate. That's wonderful. We do have more than just Spanish, but that's perfectly fine. But a letter that would maybe have English and Spanish. So if somebody is Portuguese, they would even be able to pick up the wording because it's in Spanish. But to kind of let them know, hey, this is going on. This is what might be happening to your land. This is what you think about it. Where they're coming home 8, 9 o'clock at night, they're coming home to eat, take a shower, and go to bed, and be up again at 5 o'clock in the morning and not even be aware of what's going on.
Sure.
So just an idea. I think the city or whoever's in front of this needs to have a better way of communicating with people, because I think everybody should have a voice on this and should be aware of what's going on. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for that, Maria. And it's certainly our goal and our hope to let people have that voice and let people know what's going on. I know there has been some notification of landowners so far, especially for those whose parcels are changing. And that leads me to a comment that I want to make sure that I'm clear about with everyone in this meeting, which is that the land use map that the city has, does, as I said in the presentation, look beyond the city's existing boundaries, and a lot of that land beyond the city's boundaries is today being used for farmland. But it does not, the color on the map expresses once that land is inside the city, which again, most of it is not right now, what would the city like to see happen on it? But it does not by itself compel the land to change, right? So nothing is going to happen immediately after the adoption of this general plan, except that folks who own that land would then have different options for developing it in the future if they choose to do so. And I understand and acknowledge that that can put pressure on the landowner or on the person who's farming that land, absolutely. So I'm not saying that it's irrelevant, but I don't want anybody to leave this meeting with the idea that just because the city designates something on the map that it's going to have to change tomorrow. That's not the case. That land remains under the control of the landowner, and it's their discretion what happens with it. And again, I do understand that in many cases farmers or growers may not be the landowner, and they may not be able to influence those decisions. And Maria, your point is well taken about doing outreach to folks and giving people an opportunity to know what's going on and be part of the process. And I especially appreciate your points helping those of us who aren't farmers understand kind of what day-to-day life is like for your constituents, and kind of what's realistic to expect and ask of them in terms of being involved and tracking along with the process. So thank you for that and for those suggestions about how we can do outreach to the farming community. Let's see, I said I was going to go to Patricia next. So Patricia, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I was looking at the general plan, the 2030 map, and one of the biggest challenges for our future, we're already kind of living it, will be the transportation or accessibility. Basically, the ways to get into or around Los Banos is Henry Miller Road or some of the back roads. And that's something that we really need to look at accessibility even to the college. Right now, there really is not a bus line that goes there, or you can't even bike ride. Like normally you could ride your bike to school and back, but you can't even do that. You're forced to drive to the junior campus, and we need to have in our future more access that we don't have to use as many vehicles and to get to those locations. And if there ever is something future of health being built or a new entity coming into the region, that's going to add more complications on transportation accessibility.
Okay, great point. Yeah, I agree with that. And planning for future transportation is a big part of what the general plan needs to do. And I appreciate you raising the issue specifically of bike access to the Merced College campus.
Joanna, if I can just update that Measure V funds are being planned and used. I know we have Natalia on the line and Mauricio from MCAG. And so we do have some Measure V funds that are going to be used for a bike and pedestrian path trail from Badger Flat out to the college. It's being designed, and that is being, so it's being planned, it's been planned already, it's being designed, it's currently in the design phase. And then hopefully soon we'll be in construction. So that is definitely going to be implemented and will come to fruition soon. But good point. Thank you, Patricia.
Great, thanks for adding that, Stacy. And Cassie, go ahead. You said you wanted to have some more comments, so now it's your turn again. There you go.
Now can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I had a question. They had talked about being notified. I was wondering if they can notify through the newsletter from the city with an option to have it in a different language. And that's an email post that comes out once a month. And maybe have, because I know the meeting wasn't mentioned on the April issue, but it might be another option to reach more people. That was my only comment. And if it could be done in a different language, if they request, either Portuguese or Spanish or whatever language they needed in.
Okay, so looking into ways of using the city newsletter to get the word out about meetings and offer language translation.
Yes.
Okay.
I do want to add that each month I have been adding a section, a paragraph about the general plan update in the city's newsletter and encouraging folks to subscribe to the general plan website. So go to the website to be informed with new updates, but we also ask that folks provide us their email address so that as meetings occur and updates happen, that they can be automatically notified. So we are encouraging that. I am just checking the newsletter to make sure that my component, the housing, yes. So the general plan does have its own section. So we are asking though that folks check out the general plan website, which is losbanos2040.org. And folks that are here, if you were notified via email, then that means that you're probably already signed up. But if you found out via social media or through word of mouth or from a friend, we'd ask that you go to the general plan website and sign up for email notifications. That would be the easiest way. This particular meeting, this platform, as a community meeting, it's very broad, and so the invitation was to everyone, whereas our previous stakeholder meeting where we had specific properties that the land use, we're proposing some land use changes, we sent out mailers to those property owners and also encouraged that they join our email distribution list. So you all, as being on this meeting, I'd ask that you help spread the word, let your friends know to go to the website, sign up so that they can be informed as well.
And I did just put the website, losbanos2040.org, in the chat, and also Stacy's email address, in case you want to contact her directly. And Patricia, I see your suggestion in the chat to send information to the schools and share information in various languages, especially Spanish speakers. So thank you for that. It's definitely important to us since the beginning of this project. When we set up the website 3 years ago, we set it up to have both English and Spanish kind of side by side. And we do understand that many people in Los Banos speak Spanish and prefer to communicate in Spanish. So we want to be very open to that. And I know Stacy just had a meeting, I think last week or maybe the week before, with the school district. So certainly communication and collaboration with the school district, not only to plan for future school needs in Los Banos, but also to explore ways of getting the word out to the community is very important. So thanks for those suggestions. At this moment, I don't see anybody with the hand raised or any other comments in the chat. Cliff, is there any? Okay, William, I see your hand raised. And Cliff, is there any? Do you have any comments that have come to you in the chat, or Stacy? Anybody else? Anything that hasn't come to me? Okay, great. William, let me ask you to unmute and go ahead, please.
Hi, Joanna. Thank you for hosting this. It's very interesting. We're relatively new to Los Banos. We moved here about 3 years and 3 months ago. And the one concern we have, we're getting on in age. And currently, we're going to hospitals in the Bay Area. At some point, Stanford hospitals. And at some point, we're not going to be able to make that trip. And we're concerned about the hospital here being overwhelmed, especially by the growth that's happening right now in Los Banos. Is there a plan, or is there something in this plan to address the shortage of doctors in hospitals here in Los Banos?
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I can speak kind of generically about what general plans can do to support access to healthcare. And then I'll leave room for Stacy to say anything that might be specific to the hospital in Los Banos. You know, hospitals are a great example of something, as I think we're all probably painfully aware, that are part of a very convoluted and very profit-driven system in this country. And so, you know, the city can only interfere in the private market so much, and most people think that's probably a good thing. But you know, the city cannot compel doctors to be located in a certain place. They can't compel the hospital to expand or to offer a certain set of services that it may or may not offer now. But the city definitely does have, you know, where the city, for example, allows doctors' offices to locate in areas that are near the hospital and can be supportive of the hospital, is part of what the general plan can do. The general plan can include policies that encourage the city to maintain very open lines of communication with the hospital administration and be in communication with them about, for example, projected growth in Los Banos. How many people are going to be living here 10 years from now or 20 years from now? That might be part of their customer base, or part of the driving the demand for hospital and for their services in Los Banos. And so the general plan, when I talked about SB 1000 and environmental justice, being able to have a healthy lifestyle, an important part of that is definitely being able to access healthcare. And the closer you live, the better, right? To that healthcare is exactly the point that you're making, William. So we do recognize that it's important, and the general plan certainly will think about ways from a land use regulation perspective and also kind of a government administration perspective that the city can work with the hospital to plan ahead for future needs and make sure that it's allowing for those types of uses to be located and to grow and have room to expand in Los Banos as needed. Do you want to add anything, Stacy?
Just that is definitely a top objective of the city and city administration, is to expand, either relocate the existing hospital so that it can accommodate future growth, or to attract another hospital operator within the community, because we do see that especially on the west side of Merced County, that we are a hub for medical uses. So people are coming from Gustine and Dos Palace, Santa Anela, Volta, all over the west side of Merced County, and also into Stanislaus County, are coming down into Los Banos for their healthcare needs. And then in addition, we have, just like yourselves, we have people in Los Banos that are having to leave the community to be able to visit specialists or even just to go to their doctor. So definitely that is a high priority of this city. So like Joanna said, there are very high level goals and policies within the general plan, but just to reiterate that the city on a action base and what we are doing, that is a goal of the city. We have been working with Sutter to relocate. We've had discussions with them in the past. We've had discussions with developers. And then you'll see in the general plan on the west side by Merced College in that land use area, it has a big blue area, and that's designated for a relocation for a hospital. That's that intent and where it's planned. And as the city would see, it's a win-win to have that located near the college, as we could have vocational training and a nursing program that would work beautifully together with the medical campus. The city's intent is that this would be a regional medical campus, and that we would be able to serve the region with their medical needs. So thank you for bringing that comment up. That's definitely at the forefront of our day-to-day planning, and as well as our long-term. Thank you.
Thanks again, William and Stacy. Let's see, I have a comment from Keith in the chat, so I'm going to unmute Keith, and then after that, Bob, I will read your comment. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, hi. I had a couple of questions. What's the current and future, the current population of Los Banos, and what's anticipated at general plan build out?
Sure. Stacy, do you want to speak to the current population?
Sure. The current is 42,000. We are, I don't know, Joanna, if you have the tables up on projected.
Well, I think the existing general plan, so the existing general plan calls for a population, I think, a build out closer to 90,000.
Yes.
Significant amount of growth. We're not making huge changes to that land use map. You saw the map earlier with the pink outlines. That's not like every parcel is circled in pink. So there's some relatively targeted changes. So I wasn't involved in the last general plan, and I don't know a lot about how that calculation was arrived at. I think there's, other projections from regional governments and other demographic sources out there. So this updated general plan, may or may not include those same targets. In my opinion, as a planner, a general plan should, lay out the land use map, but not necessarily link that to a specific quantity of population or square footage of development, because we know that over the next 20 years, things will change. We've all lived that in the past year, right? Things that we don't anticipate right now will change, and the city's going to need to be flexible to be able to respond to that.
And how would that match up with other cities in the valley, like Madera or Merced? You don't happen to know how big those are right now, do you?
I don't know the populations of those cities offhand. Stacy, I don't know if you have a sense of how Los Banos compares.
To Merced, they are double our size. So they're in the 80,000 population range. And then we are the second largest city in Merced County, but Merced doubles our size. And then in terms of Madera, I am not sure on their current population. I do know that they're a little larger than Los Banos. But yes, unfortunately, I don't have their population in front of me.
Okay, yeah, you know, it just gives a kind of a feel when you try to envision what's the city look like in the future, and match it up to something that people can experience now. Because I also had the same question about employment and jobs, housing balance, and all those kind of questions too.
Mhm.
And I
We
guess
do
maybe,
have
I don't know if you want to get into the weeds on things like that, or if you rather just wait on those kind of questions, and when documents will be available that we can answer those questions ourselves.
Sure, sure. Well, Natalia in the chat, Natalia from Merced County Association of Governments, thank you, is letting us know that there's about 64,000 people in Madera. So thanks for that, Natalia. And Keith, there is one document that we've produced early on in the process that has some demographic projections for Los Banos. We did a memo on economic conditions in Los Banos. This is back from 2018, but at the time when we looked out the City of Los Banos 2040 population from MCAG, Merced County Association of Governments, was projected to be closer to 56,000. And that would represent about a 1.5% average annual growth rate. And an increase, you know, of course, then about 10,000 people over or maybe more like 13,000 over who Stacy said is here today. And that's a little bit of a faster growth rate than the county as a whole, which was projected to have about a 1.3% growth rate over that same period. So a little bit faster in terms of population growth. But that report also has some information about not only residential demand with population growth, but also retail demand and office and industrial demand projections through 2040. So that report anticipated a total jobs growth of somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 to 2,000 new jobs by 2040. And by comparison, in that same time period, Merced County as a whole would have something like 21,000 job growth. So that report has a lot more detail. And if it's, I can't recall offhand if it's on the project website, but if not, we're happy to share it with you, Keith.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just thinking about economic development and diversifying the economic base. And because I work a lot, I'm in Gilroy, I work a lot in Salinas Valley and South Santa Clara, San Benito County. And some of those cities have kind of the same issues as Los Banos. And seeing them try to, or even seeing Gilroy so close to Silicon Valley and not really attracting much, like, for example, the high-tech industry or Hollister. I figured recently I did an inventory on a project, and I don't know how many years they have, 100 years of and same thing with Gilroy, 100-year inventory at the absorption rate, that kind of stuff. So that's always a challenge everybody has. And then, but one other question I had was on the land use plan, and because some of the areas are quite large, and I talked to Stacy about this a little bit, like south of Pioneer Road and a big area like that, and how you drill a little deeper on the land use patterns and circulation patterns and things like that, and what would be next steps after the general plan, or how does that link into other future more detailed planning?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. And I think I did hear you earlier also ask a question about when these documents are going to be available. So right now we're kind of not pinning ourselves down any more specifically than summer 2021. As you've heard in this meeting already, there is a number of really important stakeholders that we want to make sure that we talk to, and that you know, who have a chance to have input before we publish a draft plan. So we don't want to rush that step. But at the same time, we do have, you know, our city council has given us pretty clear direction that they would like to see the general plan published and make progress towards adopting it and finishing up this process. It's been going on for a few years now. So this summer, the draft general plan and draft DIR will be available, and they'll be on the website at losbanos2040.org when they are. And then after general plan is adopted, what happens next? It's a great question. The city council has also recently considered some draft policies that will be part of the general plan to talk about what are called specific plans. And so especially when we look at land that's right now outside of the city limits, but would be developed as, you know, part of the city and be annexed or brought into the city limits, the city is considering some new policies that would require what's called a specific plan for an area, whether it's a business type of area or a residential area or an area that includes both of those kinds of uses. And the specific plan is the place where there would be more detail and more thought put into those colors on the map that you see on the land use map. So not just a yellow blob here and a green blob here, but really thinking about, well, how big are the lots in the residential neighborhood? Are these single family homes? Are they townhomes? Are they apartments? What does the street layout look like? How do the paths connect to the park? How big is the park? Are the houses oriented towards the street? You know, all of those types of really important questions that determine how the neighborhood looks and feels and who can live there and how it functions would be worked out through subsequent documents that are called specific plans, assuming that the city does decide to move forward with those policies. But that's one way in which that additional planning might take place. We have just about 5 more minutes in our scheduled meeting time. And Bob, you had a question in the chat about PlaceWorks' role. That's the company that I work for on the downtown redevelopment. Is PlaceWorks just an advisor on the downtown redevelopment, or are they an active participant in the project? And what I can say about PlaceWorks' role regarding downtown Los Banos is that we did lead an effort that was part of the general plan update contract to develop a downtown specific plan, working with downtown property owners and business owners to come up with kind of a vision for downtown and specific priorities and policies to support things like bringing more nightlife to downtown, supporting existing businesses, supporting improvements to storefronts or to sidewalks and streetscapes, adding some gateway features and signage to help people navigate around downtown. And so we helped host and organize those meetings, kind of similar to this one, although those were able to happen in person. And we wrote that plan and included some of the graphics. Cliff was one of the people who worked on that plan. And then we presented that plan to the city council and they approved it in February 2021, I want to say. And so that 2020. And so that concluded our work on the downtown planning effort. But I do know that, you know, work continues to implement that plan. PlaceWorks is not involved in the implementation steps that might be happening now or in the future. We really have more of a planning role in that effort. So Bob, I hope that answers your question. Please let me know if I can explain any further. But the downtown strategic plan is what it's called. And that's also on the website at losbanos2040.org. I'm really proud of it and excited about it. Los Banos downtown has some amazing assets and it really feels like an exciting moment for downtown right now. So I very much hope that the planning work that we did there can be useful in the future. Just the last few minutes before we close here, what other questions can I answer, or what are some comments that you want to leave us with, especially anyone that hasn't had a chance to contribute yet? While you guys think about that, I'm gonna work on going back to that next steps slide that I showed you right before we started this discussion. Still not seeing any hands up yet. That's okay. To the end. You guys are getting a little bit of a behind the scenes look here. Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your input. just again, we are going to have the draft general plan and EIR out this summer, and as soon as they're published, they're going to be available at losbanos2040.org. You can go there right now and sign up for the mailing list, and you'll know every time we have a meeting and every time we publish something on the website. Please be on the lookout for those documents over the summer and fall and share your thoughts and your reactions to them. And then keep an eye out for adoption hearings in late 2021. Meanwhile, any additional questions or comments, you can email Cliff or Stacy. And again, I put the losbanos2040.org website and Stacy's email address in the chat for this meeting, so you can access them there. And then one more thing to just make sure that folks are aware of, we are having a city council and planning commission meeting. Let me stop share. Thanks, Cliff, for adding your email address. Planning commission and city council meeting on April 27th to talk to them about general plan topics. That's an evening meeting. The city is still holding those meetings virtually, so it will be in a format similar to this one. And you'll need a link to be part of that meeting, so you can get that at the city's website. But we'll put a notice up on our general plan website too, so the losbanos2040.org. So they'll be talking about the land use map that I showed you earlier. And if you want to have additional input on that or listen to that discussion of the Council and Planning Commission, please join us on April 27th. That's next Tuesday in the evening. So with that, Stacy, I want to also give you a chance to say any final words to our participants.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening and taking time out of your evening for us and your interest in your community and the future of your community. I appreciate that. And just to stay tuned, I think we've said it a couple of different times to check into the losbanos2040.org website, sign up to be a part of the email distribution list so that you can stay informed. And this is a very exciting process for Los Banos. It's a long process. You know, it started in 2017, so we appreciate everyone hanging in there with us. And we appreciate all of your feedback and your comments. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks so much, everyone. Good night.